Nassau Hall. This building has significant historics to our nation. This was the biggest building in the colonial periods during the Revolutionary War. And the British used this building as a headquarters, as a base. Now George Washington and the revolutionaries, the colonial army, they got kicked out of Boston, a huge harbor. Then they got kicked out of New York, another big harbor. And he barely escaped out of New York. They had him surrounded in Brooklyn off the East River. And that night, he had a couple guys set up campfires to kind of set up the illusion like the whole army was still there. And then they crept in the middle of the night in boats across the Hudson to New Jersey. And then one of the things they did is the General Cornwallis was sending his men, the British general and General Howe, to crush Washington. So he had his men off gave himself the extra protection of the Delaware. So he crossed the Delaware into Pennsylvania to give his men a little rest. And the British, they said, okay, it's the winter of 1776, 1777. And they're like, all right, we're going to kind of tamper it down and just kind of hold tight until the winter, because it was a tough winter. And what the British did is they had a series of forts and where they would headquarter their men. And this Nassau Hall was one. And then in Trenton, they had another big barracks. And one of the things that happened was they kind of let their guard down. On Christmas morning, George Washington and his men crossed the Delaware and they hit up Trenton in the middle of the morning to the British. And they were totally caught surprised. And it was the first victory that the American colonials had, the colonial army had. Next, what happened was the British came, retook Trenton, and George Washington did a tactical retreat. And there was this creek right outside Trenton, and it's called the Battle of the Bridges. And what he did is he held off the Brits from crossing those bridges. And so one of the things that General Cornwallis did up in New York is he sent General Howe to come and basically he wanted to track George Washington. What George Washington did is during the night, he set up, his men had campfires, and he left that creek in Trenton, and in the middle of the night, and he was marching to this building. They attacked the Brits by surprise. But what happened was, as he's coming up here, and there was guys, General Howe's coming from the south, from New York. They meet in a field, and so this was a huge 10-day experience with 3 different battles where George Washington won all 3 battles. He won in Trenton, he outfoxed them in the creek, and then here. And what happened was the Brits were trying to trap George Washington in Trenton. They didn't know he had his men marching all night. They meet in a field not far from here. And what happens was Hugh Mercer, who is one of George Washington's most trusted generals, sees the Brits and he beelines to try to get the high ground. The Brits see the high ground in the field, so they try to beeline for the high ground. So these 2 armies try to get the tactical advantage, and they have this huge, intense fight, a huge battle. Huge Mercer, and they think he's George Washington, the Brits, and they bayonet him 7 times and kill him. No mercy at all. The colonials start to retreat. There's a militia that comes up behind, an American militia, to try to help. They start to retreat well, and in the nick of time, guess who shows up? George Washington on a white charger. He rallies his guys, and he attacks a couple of the big cannons that were the focal point of the British offense. The Brits run, they break up. Part of them, about 400 men, retreat to this very building, Nassau Hall. George Washington and his men come here, they take their cannons, blast the heck out of this building, and capture all the Brits. It was a historic 10 days, 3 battles that changed that war, changed the momentum. and it let everybody know that we still had a good chance. It was still possible to beat the Greeks. There's a lot of history right here in New Jersey.